One of the most infamous instances of Ninjago errors is definitely going to be when the voices are on the wrong character. It has been something that has been around since the very beginning of the show and has been in Dragon's Rising as well. How these happen? Well, it's actually quite simple really. The thing is that during the production of a show, things change, things fall under the radar. It's just a simple fact of life that this kind of thing will happen. It is just kind of unavoidable. It's not something that is exclusive to Ninjago and most definitely never would have. But like I said, because of the frequency of which it happened, especially during the original era of the show, you definitely do find yourself noting it as something that does happen fairly commonly. But that's the thing, for something that does happen, that we think happens quite often, how many times does it truly happen? It is actually something that has been kind of bothering me for a while now, because as much as it's quoted, it's usually just the same few that are quoted. So what I have done today is look into voice errors within the show, and I've decided to compile how many there actually are. And in today's video, I will go through each and every single one, not including little ones, for example, Zane lacking the robotic filter or Cole not having the ghost filter on. I'm talking about instances where a different voice or a different sound comes out of a character. So let me present what I have found to you today, and I will go by each and every season and we will show how many voice errors there have truly been. And I would love to know, how many do you think there are before watching the video? Of course you can just skip to the end and find the answer, but you know, be cool. But yeah, let me not waste any more of your time, and let's look into it. Now you would think that we are going to start off with the pilots, but we're actually not going to, because there are no actual voice errors when it does come to the pilot episodes. Now you may be immediately thinking to yourself, well, Wu actually does sound different for some lines, and he actually does. He says all but one, "Father would not want you to do this, brother," and he is gone, but he will return in a different accent. This is down to the fact they were going to originally have Wu sound differently, but it's still not going to be a different person, so it doesn't actually count towards this list. But if you want to be on a technicality, there are 3 in the pilots. But let's now get into Season 1 or Rise of the Snakes. Starting off with the episode Rise of the Snakes. Kai, using Cole's model, says, "We can train tomorrow, and yeah, I got to work on some new moves." Cole versus Kai's model, says it's a scroll windbag, it means tells the future. And Kai, using Jay's model, simply says, "Ha." In case you haven't noticed, there's a lot in Season 1. Snake Bit, Cole using Kai's model, says, "Of course we'll go, buddy," and Kai using Cole's model says, "I could use a break." In Never Trust a Snake, Cole using Kai's model, "Yeah, what else did you see?" In The Snake King, Kai using Cole's model, "May the Green Ninja win." In TikTok, Jay using Cole's model, "Is everything alright?" In The Royal Blacksmiths, Zane using Jay's model, "Harmony." Jay using Zane's model, "Harmony." In The Green Ninja, Kai using Cole's line, "Ninjago." In Rise of the Great Devourer, Cole using Jay's model, "Hey, what's with Sensei?" And Day of the Great Devourer, Cole using Jay's model, "How's this for reverse?" So, in the very first season, we have gotten a fair few instances, and the main one, and something that will become fairly common, is Kai and Cole getting messed up between each other. But we do actually have a fair few when it does come to Rise of the Snakes. Honestly, I think the most out of any season. But let's see, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Season 2 or Legacy of the Green Ninja. In Pirates vs Ninja, Kai using Cole's model, "Like a magic portal." Cole using Jay's model, "Look pal, we're the guys who just saved the city from that giant snake." Cole using Kai's model, "Lloyd, don't, your powers are true uncontrollable." Double Trouble, we get to see Cole using Kai's model, "Wait, they've turned good." And Bizarro Kai using Bizarro Cole's model, saying they're at Darkleys. We aren't even safe when it comes to the Bizarro Ninja. In Child's Play, Kai using Cole's model, "What happened?" Wrong place, wrong time. Cole using Jay's model, "Ha, you made my day, Zane. I miss beating these guys up." Cole using Kai's model, "Return to the Future." In The Last Voyage, Cole using Kai's model, "Ugh, who's laughing?" Island of Darkness, Cole using Zane's model, "No one move." The Last Hope, Jay using Kai's model, "I don't know." And then lastly, Rise of the Spinjitzu Master, Dr. Julian using Wu's model, but where's the Overlord? Again, we've got a fair few here, and again, it's very commonly Cole being used for other people's models, but it's fairly interesting to see that we've got some interesting additions, like I said with Dr. Julian. But another fairly frequent episodes, and if you haven't noticed already, we've actually covered most of the most common ones that are cited to this very day. So, let's carry on with the other seasons. Moving into Season 3 or Rebooted, they're going to become a lot less frequent now, funnily enough. But in The Surge, Kai using Cole's model. What's going on here? In The Art of the Silent Fist, Kai using Cole's model. Oh, thanks Zane. Cole using Jay's model. That's awesome. You're the best. And lastly, Pixel during this episode actually uses near voice clips when fighting Zane in the forest. And then the last one is Blackout. Jay using Cole's model, more like Tech Woo. It's becoming a lot less frequent, and considering that it's Pixel's first outing, she's already gotten one. So pretty cool to see, but yeah, a whole lot to talk about. Moving into Season 4 or Tournament of Elements, in the Invitation, when the fortune cookie blows up in Cole's stomach, he uses J sounds. Knuckle, using Cruncher's model. Let's get out of here, you said to go down in the first. Cruncher using Knuckles' model. Some fight that was, I said don't be the first to go down. Jay using Kai's model. Ah, I told you we shouldn't have warned them. In Ninja Roll, Zugu does say a line in his own voice, but says it in a filter that he shouldn't have. That sounds like Cryptor's. I don't know if that one should really count. And then at the very end in Corridor of Elders, we get a line from Zane where he says 20 trucks could hold 200 Anacondri, but he says it without the robotic filter. So again, that doesn't really count, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. So very little actually in the season, and I want to quickly expand into this. From here onwards, you will note that they actually become fairly infrequent. Some seasons do have more, there are some anomalies. Season 7, but the thing is that it is showing that it does actually go away at some point in time, to the point where we barely actually get to see it, and it just does show the attention to detail that Ninjago does get. But anyway, let's continue. Possession only has 2, but technically 3. In The Temple on Haunted Hill, Zane says, me either, but just simply without the filter. But like I said, I'm including them just because you may want them. But in Curse World Part 2 comes the other 2. Wu using Ronan's model, it's Moro, and Cole using Jay's model, says ladies first. Season 6 or Skybound, it actually technically has none. Based on the criteria, there's actually no actual errors to talk about. The only thing is that in the episodes Encrypted, Wishmaster, and Operation Land Ho, Cole just doesn't have the ghost filter. But like I said, it's his voice, so it's technically not one that falls into it. But beyond that, there's nothing, which is really interesting to note. But, you know, it all changes as soon as you get to Season 7. So in Hands of Time, The Hatching, Kai using Cole's model. Who did we fight in the monastery? Cole using Kai's model. From the Painting, A Time for Traitors, Cole using Kai's model. Time. Zane, technically without the robotic filter in that episode as well, but again, doesn't count. Scavengers, Jay using Kai's model. So, does anyone have a plan? A Line in the Sand, Lloyd using Cole's model. No, that's a new one. And then lastly in the attack, Cole using Jay's model. Lloyd, Conjure the Dragon again. So honestly, Season 7 isn't doing that bad, less than Season 1 and 2, but it's definitely an increase in comparison to everything that is around it, and definitely an outstander when it does come to it. But yeah, some interesting ones. One of the first main instances of Lloyd, so we'll take that and run. Moving into Season 8 or Sons of Garmadon, in The Jade Princess, when Zane is using Spin Jitsu, he uses Wu voice clips, which is quite interesting in retrospect. Typically the ninja don't breach outside of the ninja, but yeah. In Dead Man's Squall, Cole using Kai's model says what, and Kai using Jay's model says drop your sword. And then lastly, in Big Trouble Little Ninjago, when Kai pulls a citizen off of the street, he uses Zane lines, which is interesting. And then when Zane actually says Traveler's Tea, he says it in the robotic filter in his own voice, but actually he's in the human cloaked variant. So whilst again still doesn't count, it's actually quite interesting to note that Zane has one that's the opposite. So yeah, Season 8, fairly interesting. Season 9 or Hunted. In How to Build a Dragon, a male dragon hunter using Iron Baron's model says we are being punished, and another male dragon hunter using Iron Baron's model says how did she find us. And then lastly, in Green Destiny, after getting knocked down by Garmadon, Lloyd briefly uses his old Jillian Michaels clips. That is honestly one of the most interesting of the bunch, because it might indicate that Season 9 was being worked on before they had the full voice library of Sam Vincent, but yeah, once you hear it, you can't unhear it. It's actually quite fascinating to hear, but yeah, that's Season 9. Season 10, or March of the Oni, literally only has one, and it's Cole using Kai's model, saying woohoo. Yeah, Cole is just getting so many, and he overlaps with Kai so much. But yeah, that was March of the Oni, and we're going to take a big jump now. Because now we are actually in the 11-minute era, it very rarely actually happens. For example, there is nothing in Season 11, Season 12, Season 13. In The Island, all we have is an episode, or being the Tooth of Wojira, where Zane doesn't have the robotic filter, and that is literally it. But, you know, is what it is. Nothing in Seabound, which is also quite interesting. And then we get into Crystallize, which only actually has two. First one being The Call of Home, where Mariano, using Colin's model, says, "Where are you?" And then lastly being Hound Dog McBrag, the episode where Fugidove surprises Jay, he actually uses Kai voice lines. So this is actually quite fascinating to see. For all of the episodes we had, for all of the time that we spent in this era, there is basically nothing, which is quite interesting to note. This is most likely just down to the fact that we did change animation studio, but still, whilst they are still present, it is something that just doesn't really happen so much. Dragon's Rising Season 1. In Return to Imperium, Lloyd, using Aaron's model, says, "How do you know that?" That is quite an interesting one, and honestly quite fun to see. And then in the Temple of the Dragon Cause, we don't have the Zane robotic filter in the Spirit of the Temple. Yeah, again, just including them for the sake of it. But yeah, Season 1 of Dragon's Rising has basically nothing. Season 2 in its entirety also has no voice errors, which is quite interesting to see, and yeah, fair enough. Season 3, however, in Fallen Wishes, Sora, using Nia's model, says, "Okay, what I'd really wish to know is where our missing friends are." Fair enough, a new one on the board. And then lastly is Chaos Reigns, where Kai is fighting Spectral Dragonians. He very briefly uses Lloyd's lines, like the simple grunting for example. Again, a very interesting one, and a new one for that matter. They typically don't overlap. It's usually Cole. But yeah, honestly, very little, but interesting that they did come back in that sense. But that lastly does bring us up to Season 4, or Part 1 as of the time of filming. There is only one that we are actually aware of, and again is a new one that is actually possibly one of the most interesting of the lot. In Birthright, while Jay is fighting a mutation monster in dragon form, he actually uses Nia voice clips. Now, inherently, there's nothing wrong with it, it's just another error, it could happen with any character, but we actually don't typically see it break over the gender barrier. And that's actually quite cool to see. It shows that it's not just unique to certain characters, but that is the only one from Season 4 as of the time of filming. But with that, that is every single voice error that we have actually seen. So it brings us to the question of, what is the final total in terms of how many there actually are? And that final total for voice errors is 61. That is honestly more than I was actually expecting, and like I said, that doesn't even include the differences in filters. So we have a lot more than you actually do realize. There are tons more that people just simply don't quote, and actually I'm quite fascinated by the number. I was expecting 30, maybe 40, but 60 certainly left me off guard. But I would love to know, were you expecting this number? Did you guess it correctly? And ultimately, What is your favourite voice error? Which one stands out the most? Which one is the most unique case you do know of? I would love to know what you think, because there's a lot of options to pick from, so I would love to hear it. But thank you very much for watching the video, and I do hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider subscribing. I love discussing Ninjago with more people. And if you do want to support the channel any further, which you do not have to, you could always become a channel member and join the legends that you see on screen. Each of you, your support means the absolute world to me, and I truly cannot thank you enough. But like I said, that's about it for today, and take care. Okay,